do our intro. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Christina Duzan, and I work for Andrews McMeel Publishing. We're thrilled to be hosting this amazing webinar based off the book, Women Mean Business, Over 500 Insights from Extraordinary Leaders to Spark Your Success by Edie Frazier, Robin Friedman Spiesman, and Andy Simon, PhD. We're joined today by Edie, Andy, and an impressive group of panelists who will be sharing their wisdoms on all things business and life. In one moment, I'll turn it over to Edie and Andy. Feel free to drop your questions or your own wisdoms in the chat. Please note this webinar is being recorded. Without further ado, Edie Frazier and Andy Simon.
Well, thank you, Christina. We share today how to thrive in business and in life. We're grateful for the impact of this giant sisterhood, as you can see today on the screen, of every day supporting one another. And we share what it is to drive to thrive and not just survive. Andy and I share why we're hosting this event and 50 other events now with our presentations, the wisdoms of the speakers today and the 102 that are profiled in the book. We are so proud and humbled to be able to thrive with others because the characteristics of all of you living your legacy to thrive is so amplified. And I'm proud to say to my co-author, it's yours, Andy Simon.
Edie, it's always a pleasure to join together to celebrate and elevate women, isn't it? So I'd like to begin by thanking Andrews McMeel for hosting today's event. I've already seen some chats come through from people who we've invited. The audience today is enormous, and it's wonderful to have you all here. Our gratitude for the 102 women cannot be expressed too often. They were gracious in giving us their wisdom and letting us share it. And our panel today are part of those 102 women, but you're going to find some marvelous insights from each one of them, and they're different. Some ask, why did we write this book? And I often say, because Edie called and said, you want to write a book? And out of it came a book. And Esther's laughing, but that's an Edie moment. What's interesting to me is that it took on a life of its own, well beyond simply a book. It's not our first, but it's a very different book. It's bringing together women who want to change, and I am an expert on change. People hate to, but this book is opening up energy and has a force to it that cannot be captured easily without you understanding what's going on. One woman, a client of mine, came to an event at her office, and she opened the book and showed me it was all yellow marked. And I went, wow. She said, yes, it's changing the way that I'm running my business. The second thing she said is that this is like a pep rally for women. And I went, whoa. And that's a theme that keeps coming up. A third, in a different meeting, said, I read this book every day, and it's indeed changing my life. It's a book, but it's not. There's something magical going on here. What we've learned is that thousands of women are coming together. Some events have 3,000 and 4,000 people coming together. Now, business resource groups are bringing thousands across the globe. It's really quite amazing. They want to share their wisdom, and the people who are in the audience want to share their wisdom. So Edie and I want to acknowledge that wonderful, enthusiastic support of key women's groups, organizations, and entrepreneurs who have bought books, held events, helped us share this with their audiences of various kinds. Edie, I'm going to turn it back to you for a moment. Your gratitude.
Thank you, Andy, and a joy to work with you every day. Let's focus on that word gratitude, because it's really true. We're only doing that when we elevate and support one another. So our gratitude, Pam Eason, who stepped up to get 1,000 books to kick this all off with WeBank. We're forever grateful. And to you, Suba of Saramount, and to Enterprising Women and Ascend and all the organizations. Gwen, a big shout out to you and the Women Business Collaborative, and to the entrepreneurs as represented by Kay Unger. And Esther Aguilera has led many lives, and we are thrilled what you do. And to Sharon Reynolds, you represent so much. And just want to say to all the companies, we've had 12 financial institutions either have or withhold events. And so all of that, Truist has 4,000 people they're planning to use in their event. Kimber Monterazzo has bought books for 1,000 people, including Pepperdine University and others. So this is to say thank you to all of you that are sharing the wisdom. And one of my LinkedIn messages last night, like Andy, was a woman to say, my sister was going back to work. I gave her the book, and she now knows she's got the wisdom of life to keep going and thrive.
And I would like to add to all of these acknowledgments with our deepest heart that the National Association of Women Business Owners has allowed us to use the title of the book, Women Mean Business. They have the trademark on it, and we appreciate the work that they do to help women business owners as well. So here's the question for us. What's awaiting us today? I like to do a setup. Today's a great opportunity to share the wisdom of women with you so you can turn a page and maybe change your life. It's a special event with Nadia Bilchik and these extraordinary women here. You'll feel the energy yourself today, and that's what we want to communicate. Sit tight, send along your questions or your wisdoms. Nadia is going to sort of work through them as we wrap ourselves up so there's enough time for you to be heard as well. But you're going to feel energy from a book. How does that happen? It's an amazing experience. And then you can share it. So take a book and give it to somebody else and see what you two together can do to build a sisterhood of amazing, 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 amazing women. And so with that in mind, let me turn this over back to Edie to talk about striving and happiness, because that's a theme that's come out as we worked on this. Please.
Thank you, Andy. To really strive to build joy and happiness, and let's just think about everybody's happiness quotient, because we say yes in business, but yes in your personal life. As one of those in the book, Cindy Kent, has said, it's about soul joy. And if you find something that doesn't bring you joy, change it. Because to fulfill our souls, to leave our legacy is what's so important. And as Maya Angelou said, get rid of negative people, get rid of negative things. Bring your wisdoms to bear in this sisterhood, because every day as we elevate and celebrate others to bring us joy through our mentorship and support, for us to celebrate others with appreciation and acknowledgement, our networking, that is truly what brings us the happiness quotient about life. So as we celebrated Valentine's every day, and I feel a love for the women on the screen, it's to think about what we're doing with our sense of caring so we not survive, but we thrive. And I just say, as Margot Giordis said, make your own best peace. Demonstrate your positivity and be resilient. And Paula Price in the book, her wisdom, be a beacon of life and light. And with that, we'll turn back over to Andy and to our moderator, Nadia Bilchik.
Nadia, it's time for us to give the day over to you. So let me introduce you briefly so the audience knows why it's so special to have Nadia here. She's an amazing moderator, a speaker, a thought leader. I hired her several years ago to help me with my other book launch, and I learned a whole lot from her. It was exciting. She's president of Greater Impact Communication, and she's an internationally renowned television personality, professional development training expert, author, and keynote speaker. With more than 25 years worth of television and video experience, Nadia has anchored and hosted feature programs for CNN International and has interviewed a broad range of high-profile figures, from Tom Hanks to the late President Nelson Mandela. But I want to read you her quote because it is inspiring. All women must give themselves permission to become a leader. Nurture your personal presence and ability to override any hesitation or doubt. Make your voice heard and keep your communication impactful. Nadia, our day is yours. Please take it away, my friend.
Thank you. And really, my gratitude goes to Edie, Robin, and Andy for both writing this book and including me in it, because I will tell you, every time I facilitate a panel, I learn so much. And these women give me great material for my presentation. So I have to thank you because it has been a great source of inspiration, as you said, Edie, as we continue to thrive. And I think the pandemic was a period where we were just being reactive responders. And as we get post-pandemic, and even though there's so many issues in the world, our goal is to be proactive influencers, not reactive responders. So how do we continue to do that and thrive? And we have a group of remarkable women today who are going to help us all just do that. And Esther Aguilera, we start with you. Chief Strategy Officer of Alpha Associations and Senior Advisor, Altura Capital. And Esther is going to talk about transitions and preparing for them before you have to experience them. It's the who moved my cheese and digging the well before it's dry. So thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Nadia. It's a pleasure to be here with so many dear friends. You know, the wisdoms that I shared in the book had to do with raising your hand to new challenges and stepping out of your comfort zone, because that's how you learn, grow, and broaden your horizons. You know, I've had such a great opportunity to transition and pivot to so many different sectors and industries, from government to CEO of nonprofits, corporate governance, working with corporate directors and CEOs. And now I'm in the private sector and working in private equity. So there's just, in each step of the way, you know, just bringing so much value to your next job and then learning so much more has just been such a great privilege. But on this question of transition, you know, I have a lot of friends and colleagues and people that I coach and mentor that have been coming to me and saying, you know, two things. One, you know, people don't talk a lot about how, you know, to pivot or transition. It is a really tricky thing to know, you know, when it's time to maybe, you know, think about what's new, and when it's time for you or the organization to pivot or transition. And, you know, I always say, you know what your strengths are. I've learned so much along the way in these pivots. And for one, I've learned for myself that I love startup and growth phases of organizations, of businesses. And so that's when I've learned how to thrive the most. Once I've like grown it and put so much work into really great impact, then I'm starting to look at what's next. Now, that's not true for everyone, but I have found, you know, in one situation, I was CEO of an organization for 11 years, which was a little too long. And the next one, I decided, you know what, this time it's going to be 7 years. So, and it's taken 30 years of learning some of this. But the other part of transition that I'm talking to a lot of colleagues, I had a friend call me. She was in corporate America for 30 years and still had, you know, so much more to give. And she told me, there were 10 changes in the organization. And on the 11th one, she survived all of them. On the 11th, she decided, I'm going to do the buyout. I'm going to, transition and leave this corporate job that I thought I was going to have forever. But then she said, I don't know what to do now. I still have so much more to give, and I didn't prepare enough about what else I should consider after my corporate June. It's never too soon to consider what you might do after your role. You may be very comfortable in it, and there's a lot of opportunity. For example, there is service on corporate boards, and there's a lot that goes into that you need to do before you're in the role where you're actually looking. Second, and again, I ran the Latino Corporate Directors Association, so that was one area that I helped a lot of people pivot into. And another one, for example, is private equity. Right now, I'm in private equity. And, we look for experienced executives who are interested in pivoting. If you're an entrepreneurial and maybe want to take on and grow an organization, grow a company, and grow the equity, that might be an opportunity for you to go from a big organization to something smaller. Other people want to follow their passions and serve on nonprofit boards or just retire, which is fine too. And there's some planning for that. So I will leave you with some of those thoughts on transition. There's so much more, and I look forward to continuing to contribute to this panel.
Esther, one question is, most people find change so unbearably difficult, the discomfort of change. You obviously have developed that muscle. If you were going to give anybody who's watching this going, she's right, but I'm petrified, how do you override that fear?
The fear usually comes with it, but it really is, at the end of the day, when you find that next thing that brings you so much joy and that you're contributing, you think, wow, that fear was worth it. And sometimes you have to take that plunge, go into the unknown, and then you turn to your friends, you turn to colleagues. Oftentimes, especially women, are afraid to ask and call friends to say, hey, I need help, or I can really use some ideas right now. So we build that network of people, all the women on this screen here, if it's in my power, I will do anything for them, right? And so build that network, and don't be afraid. It's not weakness to say, hey, I'm a little stuck. It's okay. Because that's what, again, this book is about, as was mentioned. It's a book about sisterhood, women contributing wisdom so we can share with each other. But it's also for the next generation to learn from us. It hasn't been easy. Look, I'm an immigrant to this country. We were undocumented. And who would have thought I would one day have worked with members of Congress, cabinet members, CEOs, and so many other people. And it took a lot of overcoming, self-doubt and low self-esteem. But every step of the way, it has taken a great network. And I've learned just to be able to call people and say, I can use your help.
Thank you, Esther. You remind me of the brilliant quote, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the taking of action despite the fear. And now we have Suba Barry, president of Ceramount, a company that builds comprehensive employee-focused solutions that are tailored to each organization. And Suba is now running a more entrepreneurial company. She has had an extraordinary corporate career. She quickly rose through the ranks at different financial institutions with a 21-year career at Merrill Lynch. She is also a multi-time cancer survivor, and her wisdoms reflect a woman who will not give up, and she keeps sharing her wisdom with others. So of all her wisdoms, today she wants to talk about the importance and the power of knowing yourself. Suba.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored to be with this group of amazing, incredible women. And Edie, thank you always for sort of being that beacon for us. You know, I spoke about 5 wisdoms, and as I was looking at them, I realized that all those wisdoms were interconnected, you know, whether it was about learning to gain P&L experience in early career, or learning to listen, or how do you practice what you know, not only practice it, but then teach someone how to actually do what you've learned. And then I talked about knowing yourself and figuring out that superpower. And I want to hone in on that knowing yourself piece, because while I may have emphasized how important it is to know and acknowledge the whole you, remember, we are all flawed beings. We have things that are our strengths and we have things that are our weaknesses. But that continues to evolve, and our ability to understand that every experience that we have in life catalyzes us to grow and become somebody. So what was not a superpower in your 20s may be your superpower in your 50s. So I think that evolution happens, and the lessons you learn and the wisdoms you get, not just from your own experiences, but from observing the experiences of others, can be so powerful. So I ask yourself to think about who you were in your 20s and 30s and your 40s and in your 50s. And I'm now in my early 60s. So I've got sort of a long look back in terms of what I've become. You constantly have to reevaluate yourself. There are parts of you that you may have liked and then disliked and then liked again. And you have to learn to acknowledge that. And sometimes you become jaded. You lose that sense of wonderment for the world around you, and the ability, doesn't matter what stage of life you are, to continuously rediscover that amazement and wonderment about something that really touches you. And you say, boy, I'd like to learn that. You're never going to outgrow that. So the evolution keeps happening. Keeping current on knowing yourself is important, because ultimately knowing yourself well means that you look at everybody around you differently also. So, and part of that for me came from really honing in on that art of listening, that when you are given a podium or an opportunity to speak, you do that. But do you just as intensely listen to someone else speaking? Or are you busy thinking about, oh, I agree with that, I don't disagree with that, or I have this comeback, the next smart thing I'm going to insert into my comments so that I can also join the conversation again? The ability to live in the moment and focus and hone in on listening to somebody else speak is a powerful thing. And it took me a while to learn how to do that, because when you're in corporate America and you're surrounded by men, you say to yourself, boy, I've got to say something smart so I can be heard and they would listen to me. But sometimes the most powerful thing is to take something someone else said, amplify it, or give them your version of it. So anyway, I think that in some ways, many of the wisdoms I spoke about tie in with each other, but it also has underlying all of it, this ability to have a combination of confidence, courage, and trust. So underline those 3 words and think about what it means. Firstly, it's about trusting yourself. Even if you make mistakes, trusting your own voice, trusting your instincts, trusting all of those experiences that you've had, and saying to yourself, they are shaping who I am and what I've become. And you'll learn. If you made a mistake this time, the next time you'll choose a little bit more wisely. So learning that trust is important, because unless you trust yourself, you are never going to be good at trusting anybody else. Second part, courage. You know that past failures do not derail you. You know that. You look back and you think to yourself, oh my God, this is career ending. I'm done with it. And yet you wake up 6 months later and you're in a place where you said, boy, how did I get there? So you know that you need to have that resilience and courage, knowing that it doesn't derail you. And, you know, when you can be kind and generous and gracious about other people's mistakes and their failures, that in itself is also a lesson in terms of honing in and saying, what is my superpower? Some of it will come naturally, instinctively, and some of it you'll have to work on and hone in on. So I think that our failures help us hone in on the best, strongest, most resilient, most enduring part of who we are. It's the experience of, you know, think about how our bodies change as we get older. our hearing isn't as acute. Our sight may be a little more blurred. But our ability to embrace and accept these changes, to learn to be kinder and gentler first to yourself, actually allows you to not only live a richer life, but allows you to find that empathy, to make room to be graceful towards others. So, whether it's my body shape or my sight or my hair or my hearing, they surely are not the way they were when I was younger, but I'm learning to embrace them. Actually, I'm learning to love them. And that's when, if you do it in an authentic way, you'll come across as someone who's confident, someone who can be trusted, someone that people can lean on, someone that people can care for. And in my mind, isn't that the objective of our existence? Think about how you become that kind of person that people want to be around. And so when I look at myself and I see a situation where I think something is unfair or wrong, whether it's for myself or whether it's for somebody else around me, I, have really honed in on the art of not staying quiet. I step up, and my superpower is that I can speak out on behalf of someone when perhaps they can't speak on behalf of themselves. And I think ultimately being a great leader is first knowing how to lead yourself. So I always say this to young people when they come into my organization. I say to them, even if the only person you're leading is yourself, you are a leader. You are a leader. Build that trust, then other people will want to come and be with you. So I feel like knowing yourself, understanding what your superpower is, and using that on behalf of others is a powerful, powerful way to be able to pass on a legacy, to say, I'm going to create the world that I want to live in, that I want to thrive in.
Suba, I am so pleased we are recording this because I want to listen to that all over again. So thank you. The next person we have is Pamela Prince Easton. She's president and CEO of the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, where she champions the breaking down of barriers that impact women-owned businesses competing for opportunities in corporate America and with the federal government. And Pamela's also had a career in corporate for 12 years at Pfizer and as an entrepreneur herself. And she's now working with thousands of women leaders. So, Pamela, what are some of the things, with all your knowledge and wisdom that you've now garnered, that you wish you had told your younger self?
Thank you for that introduction, Nadia, and thank you for that wonderful question. I thought of that actually when Edie first approached me to share some wisdoms, and it kind of caused me to say, what causes me to thrive personally? And I realized I'm a lifelong learner. So I always want to learn more. And I think that's why I worked in corporate America, why I was in entrepreneurship for a while, why I went back to corporate America, and then why I said, I can see the gap between small business and large business with the experiences that I have. And I think that I can do a lot for others if I spend my time in this nonprofit model with the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. And so it caused me to ask a lot about, what is it that motivates me? What makes me thrive? Who am I? That sort of stuff. And so I'm going to get to a call to action at the end, which has to do with using your voice as a leader. But to get us there, I'm going to try to answer the question that you said, which is, what do I wish my younger self knew? So when my younger self was in corporate America, and Sue will smile on this because it's a lot like one of the responses you got from her of her corporate days. I'm just out of college, hot with my master's degree, thinking that I have to be really fast on my responses. I got to take up airtime like everyone else does when something comes up in the corporate model. And so it was like, respond quickly, make sure I'm heard, take up space sort of thing. And that was what seemed to be of value. I'm in the same age group with Suba, and in my 60s now. And so at that time, that seemed like the only way that we could really make our impact, right? And so it was about using my voice fast, right? And trying to do it in such a way that I was getting my message out there because I was racing against everyone else to get that airtime. And so obviously what I wish I knew about that was that isn't actually the case. And we'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing that I did not know when I was in corporate America was truly the value of a team. Now, I learned that clearly over the course of time, but I think that everyone really needs to take a step back. And once I realized that you didn't have to be the only person to respond, you didn't have to take up the space just to be heard. When you really started collaborating with others and focusing on team, that's what really would drive true business impact or emotional impact or any kind of impact you were trying to do. And so I wish that I had learned more quickly the value of a team than I did, though I do think now I'm probably one of the best people at valuing team, and that I'm really good about using others to extract the best value out of them for whatever the situation is. And I'm also proud to recognize them for that, not take credit for that myself. So I would say in corporate America, that's probably the two big things I wish I had known early on, so that I would have started in my career differently. And I would encourage everyone to start with that recognition that if you want people to listen to you, make sure you say it in such a way that they can hear it, right? As an entrepreneur, I think I learned a lot about having come out of large corporations and how different it is to be in a small corporation. Now, I was very fortunate. I had business to the point of being very much overworked and could have kept doing it even when I chose to step back into the corporate world. And so worrying about my business or worrying about making payroll or anything like that was not an issue for me. And that is for a lot of people. And I don't underestimate that. What I really learned, though, was again, the benefit of really listening to what other people needed and talking about what it was I could bring to the party or my business could bring to the party by addressing what it is that they care about, not my value proposition, right? Not what I was trying to sell, but listening to what it was that they were really looking for. Okay. And I think I can't reiterate that enough. It's very important as an entrepreneur. It's equally important in any role that you're in, whether it's dealing with family members or whether it's in the corporate world. You really do need to look at it from the other person's viewpoint and try to address things that way. Again, using your voice, but making sure you do it in such a way people will listen. And then finally, probably my greatest joy besides my family, right, is really the work that I now do at the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. Many of you would know that as WeBank, but that's the longer name. And I'm not having an asthma attack today, so I can say the whole name out all in one breath, which is quite good. But in WeBank, what I really came to truly understand was what the engine of America is, the small businesses and everything that they bring to the party, whether it's around innovation, whether it's making a difference in communities, whatever it is that small businesses are bringing forward in what it is that they do. In some ways, it's so much more valuable than the experiences I had in large corporations. And I love large corporations, right? I have nothing bad to say about it. I'm so thankful I got to work for some of the best companies ever. But when you're in a small business, that day that you can hire one more person is more important in our economy than when a large corporation can bring on one more person, right? The true life difference you make, it's just so gratifying. And so I would say that what I wish I understood early on was that corporate America wasn't the only place that was going to make me happy, right? That being in small business and furthering small business, and some of these businesses I refer to as small or not small. Kay Unger does not have a small business, right? We all love her fashion. We all want to acquire it, right? That's not a truly small business. But wow, thank God she's here. Thank God she shows up in these larger places where we can find her, because people missing that would be terrible, right? And she makes such a difference every day to the life of people that she employs, as well as the people who are happy by what it is that they're wearing, right? And just think, I mean, like, you can't say that about every corporation that's out there. So I love being in this entrepreneurial space, and I love the fact that I can do the connection between corporate America and here. And so now that I finally have realized all of this, and like Suba said, it took to, becoming 60 to figure this out. But now that I think I might know who I am, I realize that I can't remain silent on things that are important, right? I have to use my voice now. Sometimes I used to just sit back, not because, I people had said some stuff I didn't feel I needed to pile on, or, for whatever reason, I wasn't speaking up about something. I now know it's my responsibility to speak up. And so I just want to, say to everyone out there, please think about what it is that you do that makes you survive, grow, and thrive. And then use your voice to be supportive of that, whether it's in a work environment, a relationship environment, or anywhere else. And so I think I would just wrap it up with that, Nadia. And my call for action is for everybody to use their voice.
Well, thank you, Pamela. And both my daughters are entrepreneurs. One is an event planner, one owns a restaurant. And I am so delighted they both got to hear you today, because that is sound advice. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Sharon Reynolds is an entrepreneur and CEO of Devmar Products and Devmar Manufacturing. She's a serial entrepreneur, and she's very stylish, as you can see. I don't know if she's wearing K-Unga, but she developed her company in 2007 to develop and distribute environmentally friendly products that eradicate pathogens. She's a real trendsetter while creating healthy spaces and sustaining the environment. So Sharon is going to share some of the lessons learned owning her own business and her journey as a Black woman entrepreneur. So Sharon, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. And just let me say how incredibly grateful I am for this opportunity to share this panel with some of the most dynamic women in America. It has been just a wonderful opportunity to be a part of this book and to, be asked by Edie and Andy to participate. So I don't take being an entrepreneur lightly. I am breaking barriers and building an empire. I say that because I come from a long line of successful entrepreneurs in my family on both sides. But I have seen what happens during the civil rights era. I'm 5 generations Nashville, Tennessee, and I can remember when I was 6 years old when everything was happening during the sit-ins in downtown Nashville, which had a tremendous impact on who I would become in business. My beautiful deceased Aunt Gloria taught me how to sew and make clothes when I was in the 7th grade. And by the time I was in the 12th grade, I had 30 customers. And I didn't know that I was an entrepreneur. I just knew that I wanted to have the types of fashions that would make me happy and make my girlfriends happy and their mothers. So fast forwarding that into what I'm doing today in business has really molded and shaped me. I am here to set the tone and the pace for the next generation of entrepreneurial women who are coming behind me, but especially Black women. We have such a barrier to entry when we know that there are systemic barriers for capital for Black women. It's not about accessing capital. We can access capital, but can we take down capital? I'm growing a manufacturing company, Deborah Manufacturing, with products that are impactful around the world, that eradicates pathogens, that will make sure that we're safe in healthy spaces and places where all people exist. So we're doing something worthwhile, but accessing capital for Black women is minuscule. And we've got to do things to make a difference in that area, in that arena. And that's why I fight so hard. So I'm going against all the odds to build a company that has a potential billion-dollar enterprise dollar amount in the next 5 years, but we're going to continue to do it. So how do we do it? We break barriers. We continue to do that. So when I look back at my grandfather, who was a very successful entrepreneur in Nashville, who built a company back in the 50s and the 60s when it was unheard of back then to take care of his family as an entrepreneur. Or when I look at my grandmother, who broke barriers as a professor at Fisk University back in the day when it was almost unheard of for Black women to be in that role, in that position. Or when I look at my Aunt Gloria, who was one of the first successful entrepreneurs with, back then it was called South Central Bell, now AT&T, and the things I was able to see a lot of my relatives do, then I decided that I would become an entrepreneur to make a difference in the next generation to come. I have a 6-year-old grandbaby girl, and I don't want her to become the ripe old age of 25, 30 and say, I'm still having the same issues that my Gigi would tell me about when I was a little girl. We've got to stop, and being part of the Women Business Collaborative and serving on the board and doing the things that we do that are necessary to change lives for the next generation of women is something that I don't take lightly and that I fight for every single day. So to also serve on the board for WeBank has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be able to still be an impact for entrepreneurial women who are journeying along my path. So I continue to say, one of the quotes I absolutely love is that, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And as a woman entrepreneur, I am not just building a business, I am building a legacy. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Sharon, I see a Netflix movie in the making. Unless, Pamela, there's already one, because Pamela is nodding. But really inspirational. If anyone was feeling slightly jaded before this, I hope this is the vitamin B shot everybody needed, because thriving often takes a collective group. So thank you all. And now Kay Unger is the CEO of Kay Unger Design, president and CEO of the Kay Unger Foundation, chair emeritus of the Parsons School of Design. She's also creative director of Line in the Sand. And I found this fascinating because, again, very topical, very necessary. It's a sustainable and protective waterware company. So Edie and Andy, I thought next session, maybe we're all dressed differently. Just putting it out there. Kay wants to share what she's learned as a designer about how to see things as images, pieces you pull together, and how life is like that, how to design your life so it's yours, not someone else's. And I love the piece where she says how to own your career and build it into one that fits you. So Kay, over to you. Hey, if you don't mind unmuting. I've often thought that virtual meetings were like seances, because we go, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Come closer. Kay, over to you.
I forgot I was on mute. I was going to say thank you to Edie, of course, who I've known for 40 years. And I think we all know when Edie calls, you always answer and know you're either giving time, friendship, and always a little bit of money, but so worth it. And she has stayed with me. I wouldn't be on this call if it wasn't for her. And to meet all of you, believe me, and know you, the fellow panelists. I wish I'd known you before, during my career as this designer you talk about, Pamela. That's very a big honor. But one of the things everybody wanted me to speak about, my life has changed. It's interesting. I was just in Florida with some of my 11 grandchildren last week, and I saw something in a store, beautiful old furniture, and I gave the woman my name and I said, I'd like you to send me, a picture of this so I could think about it. And I said, she said, what's your name? I said, Kay Unger. She goes, the real Kay Unger? And I said, yes, but what I really wanted to say was I used to be. I'm a new Kay Unger now, which is what we're going to talk about, because I look at things so differently than all of you. I visualize everything, and I want to kind of share those wisdoms with you, but I'm going to share a secret, and that is, which most of you won't believe, is that I was so shy growing up, I never used to speak. And obviously I'm different now. But what that allowed me to do was look. I learned how to see. The way Suba talked about listening, mine was visual. So I could look at how to solve problems. And one of the things that people may not realize is designers and design thinkers, we're problem solvers. So I curate everything visually. So for example, I have a calendar on my wall, which, believe it or not, I'm going to share a picture with you. So these are the months, and each is a different color. And I call this sort of mapping. And so I visually can see my life. And with 11 grandchildren, they have to have a picture of each, so I can remember them and my own children as to when their birthdays are and when their events are. But how to visually see time and projects in life. And I do that much better now, believe it or not, than when I was owning my own company for 50 years. And each, as I said, it's a beautiful way to analyze how to move forward, but with a lot of freedom. And this tool, when you're not working in a structured environment, a single focus business, which I no longer am, is a wonderful tool. I'm even creative when I pack to travel. Most of you probably lay everything out. I draw it. I draw the jewelry. I draw everything, the underwear. What do you wear under what? This is how I think. In 2012, I prepared to sell my shares in my company, with most of you don't know. And what I learned, I approached it very much the same way. I've got some really good advice, and I'd like to share that with you. And it's kind of what Esther talked about, transition. How do we prepare for it? And I said I was consulting a specialist in maybe crisis management and PR. I said, how do I tell the story of what I'm doing next in Women's Wear Daily to tell them I'm leaving my company? He said, and I said, I don't want to say I'm a consultant because I feel like that means I don't have a job. And well, that was true. He said, you're a philanthropist, and that's what you've done all along. And you just talk about the truth. We all talk about our truths. And that's what I was at the time. And so when you're leaving something, look at what you're doing now in your current job, but what you might want to be doing as you leave. So for me, my focus was to leave myself open to what's next. That was the advice that I had. And within a few weeks of leaving my company, I received an offer to become chairman of the board of my alma mater, Parsons School of Design. And to tell you the truth, it was unlike any job I'd ever had. I said, how do I know how to do that? I could draw it, but I'm not sure. I know how to handle a 42-person board and the largest part of the new school, which Parsons is. And I reached out to many of the women in this book for advice on how to succeed in this new role, becoming chairman of a board, and how to handle it, and what are the methods. And I can't tell you what great advice that was. As we say, women don't ask, and I still have a hard time doing it. I did session after session, and before each board meeting, one of many of you in this incredible book of 102 people sat with me, helped me plan my agenda, how to do it. And it was so incredible. And it was this new life. It gave me broader reach. And I saw something in me that others saw that I didn't know about. And I thrived at being this new kind of boss. I loved having some control. Obviously, with a university, there's so many politics. In fact, it's more political than politics itself. But the friendships and how it expanded my horizons, I cannot suggest enough of what to try next. I call this my third sort of reinvention in my life. And my problem-solving skills of making things fit really came into play during this, because one offered me freedom, but I had to use this problem solving to learn how to deal with all these people. And the beauty of it was when you own your own business, and those of you who are entrepreneurs, you work in it day and night. And you're so enclosed. By leaving and learning, one, that I love philanthropy. So there's one nice thing, to be honest, when you're volunteering for something, you get to do it your way because you can't say, you're not being paid most of the time. But it helped me find my voice even louder, the voice I never had as a kid. But it expanded me out of my little business, which Pamela said was big, and it was at one time, to not only dressing all these wonderful people, but expanding my life into so many. This board introduced me to other boards and into so many different facets of industry that I was not a part of. So that was really incredible. And in talking about, line in the sand, for example. So in my 50 years as a designer, and I'm about to turn 79, so I've been out there much longer than most of you. I couldn't believe that I could have this opportunity to totally change what I was doing. But it's not always easy. But what made me change and have the opportunity, what I think everybody needs to look at, is what one legacy you might want to leave. And when you're changing, when you're redesigning your life, what is your mission? So all of you are business women. You have mission and you want to thrive, you have pillars. Mine were sustainability, giving back to children, talent, underserved kids, talented in the arts, because also they very often learn differently. ADD, dyslexia, I have it all. So I understand it. And because I work at Parsons, I see these talented kids, they learn differently. Helping women and mentoring them, because look what they did for me. And those of you who know me, I've had many ups and downs, but mostly ups. And it's just a wonderful way. So when I met this wonderful woman, Lynn O'Brien, who's the founder of Line in the Sand, everything about this company with the sustainable fabric made from the plastic waste in the ocean, to the science of it, protecting us from the sun. And I used to sit in the sun, and I've had, basal cells removed. Now I only cover fully and can jump right into the ocean. And the fact that the profits go back to cancer research, and I had cancer as a kid, and how to protect the ocean. Everything about it was what I was were my pillars and my mission. And I, together with Lynn, and by the way, it's the first time I've worked with a female owned and run company, and it is spectacular. And her mission, and became mine, is that we make our own legacy and our own line in the sand. So this is how I visualize a future of transition. And I can't tell you enough about how life is full of joy and happiness, and that this new life allowed me, which we all talk about, to have a life, a family, not have to work from 9 to 5. It's more like 24 hours a day, but have choices. And I'm so grateful for all of you. And I think we should all pay it forward. Thank you.
Unger, you are an inspiration, and that muscle of reinvention and how you've continued to find new opportunities. But Stephen Covey famously said, begin with the end in mind, and the legacy part is just so extraordinary, and what you've created is extraordinary. So thank you. And last, but as we say, definitely not least, is Gwen Young. She's the CEO of the Women Business Collaborative, an organization founded to achieve significant changes in the place of women in the boardroom, the C-suite, entrepreneurial and capital funding, and in STEM. So Gwen, let's talk about how to build something that breaks the mold about how things get set down as organizations try to move the needle for women in business. Gwen Young.
Thank you, Nadia. And I think what we start with is the fact that every single one of the women on this call are part of Women Business Collaborative, right? So we all are coming here. And so that's why I'm smiling, because it's great to be with all of us that do want to work together. And I don't know if everyone's listening, but all of the wisdoms that you all were talking about, whether it's listening, whether it's being part of a team, whether it's collaborating, whether it's using your voice, not just for yourself, but for others, is the essence of what collaboration is the essence of what it is to build an alliance and really do something. And I know we all talk about this, that we come to drive impact and change. So when Women Business Collaborative was formed almost 5 years ago, now 5 years in March, right? The idea was we want to drive true impact and change, and we want to do this together. You know, that's the only way you're going to change systems, you know, organizations, policies, everything's that places like Saramount works on a daily basis, right? If you're going to really change the systems, you've got to work together, work with the team, have the same, you know, mission and vision, but build on each other's strengths and abilities to do that. And throughout my entire career, which I'm in my sort of second iteration, if you will, of my career, I have built these alliances and collaborations. And part of that is because I'm always thinking bold about how we can change the way things are done to create that equal opportunity or equity for everybody. You know, Sharon, you and I have talked about this a long time, about creating these ways that people have equal opportunity. Not everybody wants to be the CEO, but you want to have that opportunity, right? That's what you want. You want that opportunity to make the choices that you want. And so when you build these alliances, what I find is that you can build the strengths of everybody. You can do this together. You can learn from and with each other. But it's really about that shared mission and vision. So, you know, WBC is now over 85 organizations focused on equity in business, whether that's STEM, whether that's WeBank, Pam, you know, whether that's Latino corporate directors, where Esther was the president and CEO and running, right? Whether that's the WIT network, right? We've got all of these groups that are focused. We've got over 60 corporations. 30% of those are entrepreneurial women-led businesses, you know, large and small. Others are places like IBM and Wells Fargo. And then we have the 300 champions, which are men and women working together. And I want to say that we have these conversations about building this network, right? And about building the collaboration, but with everybody, all women and men, you know, organizations, and not sort of being off here to the side. And that's what I hear kind of, you know, all of you saying too, as you're talking about what you've done and that transition piece of it, the mentoring and the talking sort of cross-generational. And so for WBC, there's this real opportunity, and we talk about equal position, pay, and power. We talk about organizational change. So of course, we're each going to do it. We're going to empower each and every woman and every man to talk about the change and the equity and what we want to look at. But we're really trying to change kind of the systems. And Pam, I see you nodding, because I know with WeBank, we're saying, how do we change this conversation, right? How do we change how people look at on both sides of the capital equation, right? It's not just that women entrepreneurs and women-owned business need the language. It's that any type of lender needs to be intentional about where they're lending and where they're looking. And there is not an excuse anymore, in my humble opinion, with technology and with alliances and collaborations that we have today, to say there's nobody out there. There are plenty of people out there, whether that's your board, whether that's who you want to lend to, whether that's where you want to spend your philanthropic dollars. And there are plenty of people out there to share your mission, right? We can all hop on a Facebook page or some sort of social media and give to a cause together. We can all work together. And so I think that's what's so important. This book, this dialogue that we're having, the fact that all of us are working together, and Nadia, even the fact that we are all here virtually shows that we can all work together to really strive and create the change and look at the world that we want it to be. So we say, go big and go bold. Let's do this all together. And as Edie Frazier, who founded Women Business Collaborative, says, you know, there's no I in we, right? We need to do an I in team, right? We need to do this together. And the way we will drive true impact is by working together, and that's professionally and personally. So I'm just thrilled to be here today, but I'm thrilled to be, again, doing what I love to do, which is figuring out how do we all work together? How do we build alliances and collaboration that are going to drive true impact?
Wow, Gwen Young, thank you so much. Driving collaboration for true impact is the ultimate way to thrive. So at this point of the program, I was supposed to point out the highlights, but given time, everything was a highlight. It was an extraordinary conversation. And if I had to say, what do we all have in common, and those of you who are joining us all have in common, is there's a desire to keep learning and growing, that growth mindset. There's also an understanding that, as Nelson Mandela says, I never lose, I either win or I learn. And everybody here has overcome obstacles, but we've all learned from them. And so with that, with this extraordinary conversation, I'm going to hand back to Edie and Andy and close out what has been a truly remarkable conversation.
It has. Edie, some final remarks, and then I will wrap us up as well.
I think there's a sense of just giant gratitude and learning that we have. This video, Nadia, needs to be shared, Andy, with millions and millions of women. Because look, as Gwen, you talk about working together and collaboration, and Kay, you talk about drawing your own line in the sand to build the joy and the legacy of Give Back. Amazing, designing your life and moving. And to Sharon Reynolds, what you've done to bring out Black women, to bring out the struggle, but the perseverance that you say, your Aunt Gloria, and how difficult, but you keep going through collaboration and you keep learning. And Pam, Prince Eason, amazing as you've looked at the difference of life, of keep learning, listen, use your voice now and speak up and don't be afraid as you break barriers. And look at Suba, my gosh, just in using confidence, courage, and trust, and thinking about that as you really built knowing yourself and using your superpower and your generosity, that spirit of generosity. And Esther Aguilera, as you've built transitions and pivots and came from such a background with such a force to build your own network with courage and to build the sisterhood that you talked about. Just, we listened, we learned, we share. And back to Andy, because we will never stop giving back and loving and respecting each other as we strive to all leave and give back every day. Andy?
Edie, I'm just fascinated by the comments coming through. The panel, we cannot thank each of us enough as a team, individually, for sharing your hearts. People say I've been inspired. It's the most incredible panel. It has been. And I can only tell you that the joy that you bring is well past the book itself. And Nadia, you're smiling. I love the wisdom, and thank you for everyone smiling. I hope the panel reflects everyone in the audience as well. So my last thought is that one woman commented, I reread the book to start my 2024 year. It's so full of motivation and inspiration. It's much more than a book. So this is a time to share. And remember that as we rise, we lift others. And that's what today was all about. You too will find that as you turn a page, you will change your life as it has changed ours. Edie, this is happiness. And I've got a happy quotient. I know you do. And everyone else here in the room, you're all smiling. I think we have to say goodbye. Nadia, would you like to end and say goodbye? And Christina can close us off.
I am ending this by reminding ourselves, as you said, and I think it's so important to remember that there is no greater impediment to getting on well with other people than being ill at ease with yourself. And just that it all does begin with ourselves and our attitudes and radiates from there. So what a pleasure and a privilege. And thank you all for sharing your wisdom. I've taken lots of notes. Christina, back to you.
Thank you, Edie, Andy, and Nadia, and all of our wonderful panelists for sharing your wisdoms with us today. If you registered for this event through Eventbrite, you'll be able to receive a recording of the webinar via the email you provided. Again, many thanks to Edie, Andy, Nadia, and all of our participants, and thanks to each of you for attending.